Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media here, and we're joined once again by Mark Gonzales. And of course, we are seeing some huge reactions in the market overall after China has escalated with a 125% tariff on U.S. imports, signaling that they will ignore future retaliation, which is big news, as we also see them delaying the Boeing delivery into the United States, possible non-tariff countermeasure. They say it's as a matter of revenge. We're seeing Boeing planes fall out of the sky, and they need these materials to maintain them, and now they're just cutting that off. So of course we're going to see more and more of people cheaping out on these items. Of course, businesses are getting hurt badly, especially smaller businesses, when it comes to actually shipping things in, because most stuff is made by China. Trump administration mulls farmer bailout after China's retaliatory tariffs threaten exports. So this is a big one because that involves the supply chain, which I have been warning about for so long. And that is a big part of the Great Reset: destroy the supply chain, destroy farmers, and then bring in rations later. Well, it makes sense because now, as News Target reports, U.S. gains ground in battle with China in Panama Canal dispute. By the U.S., they actually mean BlackRock. BlackRock is taking over the Panama Canal. Now, China is the hallmark or the litmus test for technocracy, according to the Trilateral Commission out of the United States. Since the 70s, Rockefeller, Zbigniew Brzezinski propped that up. Klaus Schwab said himself, China is a role model for the Great Reset. Well, on top of that, one of the biggest examples of the World Economic Forum in action within corporations is BlackRock owning up all the property, now owning up all of the exports and imports. We're talking, this is going to obviously affect the supply chain dramatically long term. Now, it could cut China out of the dollar system, but does it matter? The BRICS system seems to be doing much better going forward, like long-term outlook, than the dollar, because of course the dollar is suffering as a world reserve currency right now and isn't long for that. A lot of the biggest countries that make it the world reserve currency are pulling out, including European countries, by the way. And it says inside the BRICS scheme to hotwire the global economy. The idea is to hotwire it, but it will be digital. All the countries involved are releasing CBDCs. And on top of that, the United States and the European Union are also releasing CBDCs. Speaking of the European Union, the EU hits America with $21 billion in retaliatory levies hours before Trump tariff pause. Okay, so across the board, okay, we're seeing some bend the knee, we're seeing others escalate, and what that leads businesses to do is get into desperation mode, increase prices dramatically, and do everything they can to maintain their business through a trade war, which is devastating. And by the way, a socialist idea, which a lot of the people supporting Trump seem to be ignoring. When Obama did stuff like this, everyone ignored it on the left, and now back then the right got mad. Now the right are ignoring this, and the left is getting mad. I mean, it's just a telltale sign of the hypocrisy and the paradigm, as we see in the face of all this. Gold skyrocketing, gold price climbs to fresh record high above 3,230 as U.S.-China trade war deepens. But of course, it's decoupling with the Dow. We saw the gold go down with the Dow of last week. Now we're actually seeing the opposite take place here. The Dow has been hurt pretty badly. It's up and down. Of course, on the one day, everything looks good. Oh, look how much it's up, 1.56%. It's a miracle. It's a miracle if you ignore the fact that first they pulled out the rug and destroyed it, and then now we're seeing them continue to prop up the bubble. So we're going to go into this, what's happening with China, and more today, my friends. Before we do, I urge you to check that link below for firstnationalbullion.com/schedule-consult/ has to be that link. It's in the description on Rumble, BitChute, and others at World Alternative Media. There you could avoid the CBDC, avoid the trauma that comes with this heavily centralized market. You could buy physical gold, silver, platinum, or palladium, hold it in your hands, put it in a vault, or put it in an IRA outside of the traditional IRA system. There you could schedule an appointment for a free consultation with Mark Gonzales and a complimentary investors package. Just let him know when you sign up in the comments of the forum that you found him at World Alternative Media, or WAM, WAM. This is your opportunity to protect your money now, and I highly recommend people get on this. Now, let's get into this, Mark. China escalating with 125% tariff. Everything, like I've said before, all roads seem to lead to Rome. And one thing or another, when the left does it, when the right does it, it all brings us down the same path. Leads us to a digital system, leads us to being further controlled, paying more money on top of the already existing heavy inflation. What do you think about how this trade war is going since we last talked earlier last week?
things are going perfectly as planned as far as they're concerned. The thing we got to keep in mind with the Great Reset, you own nothing and be happy Agenda 2030 is this is a top down structure. What you're witnessing is the bottom level of pieces coming together with solidifying this digital ID, this CBDC payment system. So China's retaliating. Yeah, we're going to retaliate back. What this comes down to, in my opinion, is it's a dog and pony show. And what's going on politically, as you mentioned, with the right and the left and changing positions on where they stand conservatively and who they back and what's going on. It's a perfect Jones Plantation situation. Go watch that on Amazon Prime. It's to me, it screams distraction. It really does. Like something is going to come swiftly, give us a hard kick in the ass. And I'm not sure what it's going to be because this is all headline news. And they collapsed markets. They brought down gold and silver, which, by the way, let's tap on that for a second. Let's look at the Dow. So they're talking about the Dow rising at the fastest clip since 2008. Woohoo, rah, rah, rah. Let's put it in perspective. They took it down. It's coming back up, but not coming up fast enough yet. Been screaming from the top of my lungs, get precious metals, get precious metals. Gold went from a 3180 top roughly range down to a 2950 in roughly 10 days. And it took 2 damn days to make all-time highs of 3230. Okay, but the Dow, we're still negative. We're still negative from the drop. So precious metals win. It's real money. Everything else is just kind of a dog and pony show. It's a snowball effect to get you look the other way as far as the detraction. And to say that we're going to pull China out of the dollar system, they don't care. They really don't give a damn. They have the BRICS. They have the infrastructure. They have the BRICS unit backed 40% by gold, which is competing currently right now against the SWIFT banking system. And anybody can participate in that they choose to. We, of course, will not because we're assholes. The one caveat for that is you have to have your gold that your country owns within your borders. That's why you've seen the exodus. So it really doesn't matter with China, but now they're going to start holding back on the manufacturing, the deliveries on Boeing. What else are they going to do? It makes me thankful. Today is exciting to me and realizing that I'm glad I moved to Mexico because at least we got a great labor force. So I'm never going to run out of rubber chickens or whatever the hell I need. If you're in the States, you're going to have a very, very difficult time. Now let's touch on the Panama Canal, top down situation, dog and pony show with everything else. Now they're starting to control the distribution and control of import, export, logistically of goods and services. As you mentioned, shortages. Time is nigh. It's coming. We've been saying it for a long time. This is the bottom rung of the system already being built at the highest level. First, the infrastructure of Agenda 2030. They said we're going to have a digital currency. They said we're going to have digital surveillance. They said you're going to own nothing, be happy. And then you got C40 cities, which is your 15-minute zone. So it's working together perfectly. Now we just have to control the logistics and the checks and balances of what you can and cannot get. And it's just not going to stop. I don't know what to tell you.
Well, and I mean, at this point, okay, so people will say, well, this is 5D chess. He's doing all this stuff because it's going to come back and help him in the long run. Look, if this leads, all these tariffs somehow lead to the rest of the world getting rid of their tariffs, that would be a great thing. I would love to see that. However, I don't think that that's how farsighted they're actually looking here. I believe that this is actually just a way to shift into that new beast system of digital IDs and everything. In fact, they just released the Kristi Noem, the transportation secretary, just announced the release of the real IDs for flying now. Of course, everyone that is American will have to have it in order to go around anywhere in the United States or outside of their country and have their face scanned and all that kind of stuff. So look, this stuff is happening at rocket speeds. Of course, the idea of you will own nothing and you will be happy out of the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab. Of course, people are cheering. Oh, he's gone from the WEF. Who cares? It doesn't matter. It's still the same system. It's still the same power structure. And he left 2 years ago, and now he's officially resigning. And people are acting like this is new news. What we're seeing here with BlackRock, not just taking over all the properties, so no one owns homes anymore in this environment where already the housing market's heavily bubbled in hyper-localized areas. But on top of that, no one can afford a house anymore, especially younger people. I mean, it's just going into full-on rentals. No one owns property. Well, now take shipping, all shipping, and you end up with something very, very dangerous, a from the technocratic approach from BlackRock and the World Economic Forum is that they control what gets into your hands and what doesn't through digital IDs and CBDCs. So, okay, we see this shift out of the dollar into bricks. The dollar has been dying for years. People have been saying for years to me, hey, Josh, you always say the dollar is going to crash. When is it going to crash? Well, it happens over a decade or two. It doesn't just happen overnight. This is something that's a slow roll. And now we're seeing that end point. And you can't deny that all these crises are happening simultaneously. Am I blaming Trump? No, because no presidents have power. We saw massive tariffs happening before from other presidents, mostly Democrats, because generally we saw it from FDR, who was one of the most socialist presidents in history. These tariffs are taxes on the consumer, and then therefore the people that are owning these small businesses have a tough choice to make. They have to decide if they're going to buy something that's 5 times the cost in the United States from a local manufacturer, if that even exists. And in many cases, it doesn't, especially for mining metals and stuff like that. They have to decide if they're getting it from a local business and raise their prices dramatically to make them non-competitive on the market, which is a big middle finger to the idea of capitalism, which is its voluntary exchange. And it goes straight into corporatism, and these businesses will need to be bailed out. And if they're not, which most won't be because they're small businesses, then we see lack of employment, lack of manufacturing. It snowballs in the worst way. It's a backlash that you get from attempting to make it America first. I would love the idea of the United States being more independent when it comes to manufacturing things, but this is not what's going to do that. People could say 5D chess all they want. People have been saying 5D chess about Trump since 2017 when he first got in. First thing that he did this time around was try to pass anti-Semitism laws that ban you from speaking and could go put you in jail for 5 years or get you deported, even if you're a legal citizen. I mean, we're talking really restrictive measures are being made, and it's going to cost you. And again, people say, well, what about Kamala? She was way worse. Yeah, in theory, she's way worse because she's a crazy woke woman that is obviously out of her mind, and a leftist and all that kind of stuff. But that's the paradigm that they keep you in. They make you okay with the problem or the shit sandwich you get today because the douchebag would have been worse. If you ever watch South Park, you know what I'm talking about. This is where we're at right now. And of course, it's all going to topple down on the everyday person. Whereas, of course, and this isn't me trying to sound like Bernie Sanders here, but, the rich will get richer and the poor will get poorer, and the rich are getting lesser all the time because they're trying to make more of those rich people poor. Because at the end of the day, you end up with a small fraction, and it's easier to control the rest of people via the emergency orders and everything, especially with World War III and Civil War and all that kind of stuff. Mark, I mean, the historical need for gold and silver is obvious. It's been going on for thousands of years, but in the face of something like this, okay, say people have an IRA or they have something tied up in all these stocks, and it's so unknown where they're going to go. Yet it's pretty well known historically, not investment advice though, where gold and silver would likely go. Why is it so important for people to think, hey, maybe in the midst of this trade war, no matter how much hopium I might have, which is a deadly drug, by the way, maybe it's good to protect the money I have in these investment retirement funds and get it into something like gold and silver?
Well, very simply put, and before I kind of get into that, I want to tie this together a little bit. You mentioned people tell you all the time, when's the dollar going to collapse? You've been saying this for a long time. I get that constantly. Not as much anymore, to be honest, because I think we are in a bit of a great awakening, but I don't feel that there's going to be enough pushback for us to, win the war and take back. I mean, the odds are just stacked against us, especially when you're really months to by the end of the year away from the digital currency option, and then probably just a few short months after that from it being the only option. But let me remind people that the IMF SDR was created in 1968 to absorb the dollar's default, and knowing 3 full years ahead of Nixon closing the gold window. So this position has been in play for 60 years. Mm-hmm. It really has. And the reason the SDR was put into place is because they needed a fund or a basket to be able to convert dollars into, so the dollars weren't sold directly back to our treasury, because we would have been bankrupt in a matter of days. And that system still stands. And if you go to the IMF website and you look at the basket valuation of the SDR, China got admitted into that in 2015. at a significant percentage. So China's back in the game, and they don't really give a damn if we cut them out of the SWIFT banking system. And then look at the conversion of the U.S. to the SDR, and take a look at our last video when I talked about the exchange rate is the inflation that we are about ready to absorb that's been pushed off when everybody else in other countries takes a loss from the peso to the dollar. That's our inflation over there. Well, look at the conversion of the dollar to the SDR, and you're going to find out that we're already losing. So, we're going to start suffering. As far as the paramount of gold and silver, again, let me remind you, 10 days down from just under $3,200 to $2,950 an approximate, and now we're at all-time highs. 2 damn days. Doesn't matter what silver does. Silver's going to react. Gold's the one pushing the market right now. And you're going to have a lot of people start to go through panics as they see the confusion of tariffs, and they really see this for what it is. And even if they don't, you have off the charts demand for these products. The more buyers than sellers, you're going to see these prices rise. But again, gold and silver, every dollar in will be protected to at least the purchasing power of the devaluation. The 64 quarter, which has silver in it at today's price of roughly, we're going to round up a little bit, and we're going to call it about 32. It has about $5.80 in silver at today's current price. And guess what? In 64, we bought a gallon of gas, and guess what? Now it's still going to buy a gallon of gas. Every dollar in your wallet, if it remains in dollars, is going to be devalued. Everything priced in dollars going through this reset is going to find its true value. And when you got a 99X with a 1% average reserve, do the math. Seriously, you got to think about this logically. So gold and silver, it's money. It's protected for thousands of years. It's the only thing you can hold out of a banking system, out of the depository system, that is not susceptible to what David Webb has been talking about for a while with the great taking. It is something you can hold. It has a utility outside of the digital system, which is coming. And another thing, we did a video on the $1.3 billion in investment into the EU digital framework. On a little bit more digging, that is for surveillance, people. Yeah. The majority of that is for surveillance.
So they're releasing their CBDC by October at the latest this year. They're talking about the UK CBDC will be out by December now. And of course, they have it through the Stable Act of the Genius Act, which we recently did a video on, which I urge you guys to check out, regarding the CBDC in the United States. And by the way, China and Russia are some of the top allies of Iran. So if you think Trump is going to be more easy on that shift happening, it's not going to happen. He's talking about bombing Iran right now. BRICS has, if you consider everyone that's in BRICS and all the countries that are looking to join BRICS, you combine that, it's over a 6 billion population of Earth. It's a majority of people on Earth will be in that BRICS system. And China has pushed back and said, oh, don't worry, we're not going to completely replace the dollar anytime soon. And then all these tariffs come in, and now they're like, we're going to restrict almost all trade with the United States. And by the way, people depend on China. Countries depend, the United States depends on China more than China depends on the United States, because they have slave labor, my friends. It's really cheap, and they are a far more technologically advanced place. Though Trump says he has a secret weapon that no one can even imagine the technology of that could stop them. But I mean, like, what is he talking about? The point is, China has been the role model for the Great Reset, as Klaus Schwab says, and now we're seeing that shift happen, and that digital umbrella is really kind of coming in fast. We see it across the board, and now with Real ID in the United States, digital ID across the board, social media creating digital ID systems, and of course the United Nations Pact for the Future, 193 countries signed on to it, as Mark and I have talked about, restricts bank accounts based on what you say, uses social credit, carbon credits, wants food rations, all these different things. And then people are dependent on the banks that, by the way, 63 central banks, as we reported, brought in Basel III, which means bail-in regimes, which means they could just take your money out of your bank. And those banks, FDIC, not insuring almost the vast majority of the money, more than, 99% of the money isn't covered. And then on top of that, the banks are all going bankrupt. Their cash deposit ratio is below 1% in many of these major banks. They're closing locations across the board. They're talking about bank runs. All these things are happening simultaneously. It is crazy to not take that seriously and kind of get your head above water. And there is a link below, firstnationalbullion.com/schedule-consult/. But before we go into that more, Mark, just in the face of all these things, how do you think people are going to respond when it comes to gold and silver versus, their money in these major stocks? I know a lot of people have their investments, their retirements, I should say, tied up in companies that, are all collateralized. They're all just big blocks of different companies that are traded on the stock market that some financial advisor said, hey, this is a great idea. And meanwhile, there's something that historically has not yet failed. I mean, what do you think?
Well, it's a shell game with the stock market, and I've been calling for a apocalyptic market crash, which is going to happen just because you leverage it. But one thing that comes to mind as you want me to explain this is people are going to rush into gold market. A lot of there is going to be a fair amount of people that are going to be a deer in the headlights, and they're not going to do it the 401ks, and they're still going to have this hopium of what's going to happen. But then you're going to have this come to Jesus oh shit moment, and a lot of people are going to be buying gold and silver. There's only so much that you can put your hands on. You don't replicate this stuff. Alchemy is not real. And the day that happens is the day you pretty much miss out. If you can get gold or silver, the premium is going to be so high because it's just completely not going to be available. So do yourself a favor, take action, reach out, have a conversation with me. It's not that hard. And don't be a statistic.
Yeah, there's shortages across the board right now with gold. People have been rushing to buy it, and now with it in the face of these tariffs, I mean, at first we saw it throttle gold a little bit and silver as well, of course, but that only just gave a buying opportunity. Which obviously, as we said earlier last week, we said this would happen and that it would cause a big buying opportunity, and obviously a lot of people thought the same because now we're hitting record highs again. See, there's these up and downs, these hurdles, but overall, we're talking about wealth insurance versus the dollar, which again, remember, if you were born before the 1970s or before the 1960s, remember as a kid how much your mom would send you to the store with for a loaf of bread or for some milk. Well, actually, usually the milk was delivered by truck. Okay, for a loaf of bread. Nickel. Imagine how much okay. And then, yeah, nickel. And then, okay, let's fast forward to how much, if you were growing up in the 80s, you paid, how much in the 90s, even in the early 2000s. Compared to today, it's astronomical how much more we're paying. And, we're looking not the same as Venezuela because Venezuela is considered an emerging economy. So it isn't, obviously, it's going to fall a lot harder and faster. But if we see the rug pulled out on the dollar as a world reserve currency, we can assume that we're going to see something very similar to Zimbabwe, very similar to the Weimar Republic, very similar to Venezuela, actually probably more so like the Weimar Republic than any because Germany was a big economy when it fell. So just look at history and then consider the amount of debt today versus what there was back in Weimar, Germany. In comparison, we're actually dealing with a house of cards much bigger and there's a gust of wind coming, okay? This bubble is much bigger. It's been papered over for years. It's far more dangerous now than what we saw in Weimar, Germany. And remember what came out of Weimar, Germany. So I think it's important that we understand this going forward. And as I mentioned earlier on, in the face of these massive tariffs, and again, people can say Trump's going to solve everything. He has 5D chess. You can believe that if you want. But in long term, if you believe in the fiat system, then you are going to get hurt. And it's evident that the technocratic system is coming in right now. So here is a safety net. And I really want, I try to drive this home because this is all about solutions. firstnationalbullion.com/schedule-consult/. It's very easy to go and check that out and sign up on this form. Again, it has to be that exact link so that you could work with Mark. You can sign up with anyone there. I don't do whatever you want, but hey, I recommend, because Mark's been doing this for so long and has been speaking out about this and is awake about what's going on, that you go to this exact link. Again, that's firstnationalbullion.com/schedule-consult/. There you can avoid the CBDC system, avoid the restriction of your access to your own money through the banks, avoid all that. Go and buy physical gold, silver, platinum, or palladium. You can hold a gold or silver in your hand, put it in a vault, or put that in an IRA outside of that traditional IRA system that we were just talking about. Again, you schedule an appointment for a free consultation with Mark and a complimentary investor package. Just let him know in the comments of the form. Again, super easy to fill out. Let him know in the comments of the form that you found him at World Alternative Media, or WAM, WAM. And if you contacted him before and you haven't heard back, then it's probably due to junk mail. It probably went to the junk folder or something like that. So just pay attention to your email because you never know. There's across the board, especially if you're using Google or any of these guys, they're going to try and restrict you solutions. So make sure to check into that. And of course, work with Mark and check out that link in the description. Finishing this off, Mark. I mean, we don't have a magic mirror. We don't have a magnifying glass that will tell us everything that's going to happen over the next 50 years. We know where things are heading. How do you think this tariff, move is going to work in the next few weeks? Because honestly, I could see it. I could see the stock market skyrocketing. I could see it collapsing. I see it all as one big bubble anyway. That's totally spoofed and manipulated, and they're bragging about manipulating it. Where do you see this kind of moving in the next short while?
I think it goes back and forth for a while of blame this person, blame that person, see who can try to get the upper hand in leverage markets. There's not a lot of juice left in the Dow. I mean, really, if you look historically at the valuation of the Dow versus other ratios, Dow versus gold, Dow versus home ownership, real estate, things like that. I mean, it's extremely overvalued.
Yeah.
It is absolutely extremely overvalued. So again, this is a distraction. I think it's just going to go back and forth. But again, you mentioned okay, BRICS. Majority of the population is within BRICS already legitimately signed on, and then all the other countries that are wanting to participate, and they can participate without joining BRICS because they can take part in the unit system if their gold reserves are in their country. It's not just the population; it's also the GDP. Even though GDP is going to be revalued as well, going to a digital structure, but you're also looking at the agriculture, you're looking at the food, you're looking at the resources. So we own nothing. I mean, the U.S. is resource rich, and we have some agriculture, but our investment in it has dwindled for so long. For us to catch up to their level, it's not going to be a good situation. So it continues, and you're going to see more goods and services be restricted to coming into the U.S. until the U.S. bends. As far as the crystal ball or the mirror, yeah, we do. We got one. Yeah. You got the World Economic Forum. You got the IMF. You got all these think tanks that have published material that whether it's to be enacted on or not, or says it's to be enacted on or not, when they publish it, it means that they're talking about doing it. So I encourage everybody to go take a look at Agenda 2030, connect the dots. So we were told we have a crystal ball. And if you understand what the agenda is, what that crystal ball telling is, then you can see this for what it is. Yeah. It's as simple as that. As far as the timing, does Armageddon happen tomorrow? Probably not. Could it? Yeah, right. It's the bigger question for that is how prepared are you if it does?
Yeah. Absolutely. And of course, that shift from the West to the East is manufactured. The U.S. propped up China in the first place. Henry Kissinger meeting with Mao Zedong to create an alliance with China to save them from a starvation event, which then integrated them into the Trilateral Commission's agenda under Jimmy Carter with Zbigniew Brzezinski and the Rockefeller family. That was utilizing China as a guinea pig state for technocracy. Now we see social credit there. We see facial recognition. We see all these things. And then the U.S. will say, oh, look how tyrannical it is. But then, just as I mentioned today, Kristi Noem says, oh, we have real ID now. We have facial recognition for all passport use, getting in and out of the country or just traveling state to state. The litmus test of the COVID restrictions, all these things lead to what we're going to see next. And we're seeing it in real time. BlackRock taking over in the Panama Canal over China. I mean, by the way, they are talking about a crystal ball this summer in Rio de Janeiro. We see BRICS meet. And I would not be shocked at all if all of these countries that all came to an agreement, or at least most of them came to an agreement to then push back against the United States, because the U.S. would have no power if Russia, China, India, Brazil, all of these countries said, we're not working with the U.S. anymore unless you pay these massive tariffs. It's very, very much a possibility, and people don't like to hear it because they say it's negative. But unfortunately, if you haven't been paying attention to the news lately, all the things that we've been called negative for have unfortunately been unfolding, and we don't want to be negative. We want to give you solutions, which is why we try to give you that safety net with things like, again, firstnationalbullion.com/schedule-consult/. Link is in the description, my friends. Take an opportunity right now to just step back, sign up, have a call with him. You don't have to sign up with him other than just, sign up for a call and talk to him and see how you work with them. I mean, it's just going forward, it's so important that we take these opportunities now and not sit on our hands waiting to see what happens next. Because if we wait and see what happens next all of our life, we'll never see anything because we're just going to be waiting. And of course, that's going to unfortunately plunder our money if you have all your money in a bank account going into this digital system. So anyway, I appreciate you going into this with us, Mark. And as always, my friends, this is Josh Sigurdson and Mark Gonzales signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth. Be the change.